Smiley from the Energy Boutique with your energy and ascension forecast for Sunday, June 22nd to Saturday, June 28th. So last week, of course, we had a major week. Not only were we closing out Gemini season, but we were actively collapsing old timelines. We had a major shift in the energy, in the projection and trajectory of this next karmic chapter. And of course, with all of the worldly events popping off, there is definitely a direct correlation to how the collective responded to some of those events, what we did to rise up and rise above to break the old framework from those particular events. And because of that, we did see a major shift in the energy, in the collective, in the now potential timelines that we are anchoring in as we're moving through this particular solstice gateway. Of course, a lot of that bang happened in alignment with not only Mars, the god of war, moving into Virgo energy on the 17th, but that last quarter moon popping off in Pisces energy the day after. And of course, there was a lot of oppositional forces there in order to put us in a situation to close out the old toxic patterns and behaviors, to put old chapters behind us, and to start leaning into the healing, to the adjustments, to the improvements that have to be made, especially if we want to continue to anchor in this new version of self. We knew that this last week was going to be a doozy because we were building towards today, when the sun is going to be entering into Cancer energy, triggering that solstice point, and of course, unlocking karmic chapters. We are putting a lot behind us. We are anticipating jumping into new environments, new circumstances, new life lessons, all of that because, again, we've been tested, we've been doing the work. Many of us are rising up, rising above what it is that we've done in the past, and therefore we are doing things differently. That has a major impact on the collective's energy. It gives us a little bit of an opportunity to move into new foreign territory. And so it's a beautiful thing, but let me be very clear. Let me be very real with you. This is going to be a tough ass week coming at us. And I know we just want some relief. I know we just want a break, but here's the thing. We're shifting into Cancer season here Friday evening. If you're with me in the chat, thank you so much for being here. But still, we are waiting for this transition to happen. The sun is at the 29th critical crisis degree of Gemini energy. We will be shifting into Cancer energy here before midnight in most time zones. Some of us will be experiencing this early wee hours on the 21st. Either way, again, the solstice point is no joke. The karmic shift, no joke. The vibration and frequency adjustment, no joke. And we get thrown essentially out of this manic, overwhelming pressure in the headspace that we've been sitting in for a month in Gemini season. And we're dropping all the way down into the feels, into the heart space. That's what that Cancer energy is all about. We're moving from air to water. We're moving from mutability to cardinal energy. And so here's the thing. We have some tough aspects popping off in this very first week of Cancer season. And on top of that, we have a new moon popping off in Cancer energy that is going to be conjunct Jupiter, which is going to over-exaggerate and magnify the emotional state that many of us are going to find ourselves in. And there's going to be a lot of sadness, a lot of grief. Why? Because we just walked away from a version of self that we were very comfortable in. We just chose to do things in a much better way, in a much, I'm going to call it, much more aligned version of self. And therefore, the karmic chapters that we are essentially severing ties with, there's a lot of emotional residue that comes with that. And this week is going to be very challenging with a lot of the different aspects popping off. Specifically, I'm talking about the sun fresh in this Cancer energy, conjunct Jupiter, and both of them kind of still squaring off with Saturn and Neptune in this Aries energy. There is a growing pain that collectively we're going through and individually that we're going through as well. And that particular pressure, that grief, that sadness, that ending, that closure is definitely going to be felt in this very first week of Cancer season. We also have Mercury, ruler of the mental plane, ruler of information, communication, how it is that we express ourselves, sitting at the 29th critical crisis degree in Cancer energy under this new moon in Cancer, which is going to be an emotional, let's call it grieving process from the world and the version of self and the dreams and the goals and the visions that old self once had. Mercury's going to be moving into Leo energy not only 24 hours after this new moon in Cancer peaks. And that is a major shift in our headspace and in our heart space. And heads up, we really want to double down and pay attention to what's going on around this particular marker, because Mercury will eventually be going retrograde in this Leo energy. So we got a lot going on. We have a lot that we have to kind of push our way through. Transitions are never fun. Bridges are never fun. Leaving something behind to throw ourselves into something new is never fun. And there is a particular grief process that our soul or spirit needs to go through in order to cleanse our emotional, mental, spiritual, and physical space of the junk and the gunk that, again, we have decided that we are no longer sitting in, that we're no longer dealing with, and that we 100% are leaving behind. And the good news is that once we get this very first week of Cancer season over with, not saying it's all, rainbows and butterflies for the remainder of it, because we have some major heavy hitting energies with all of these major heavy hitting planets on the move, specifically retrogrades and, Uranus moving into the Gemini energy. There's a lot going on under this particular Cancer season. I feel like now would be a good time just to remind you, if you want a overview of what Cancer season is all about, please jump over to my Patreon, take a listen to that Cancer season astro forecast that I put out there in order to understand the major transit that is happening under this very pivotal karmic switch up point. So we definitely got a lot going on. We have to expect that with all of these major energies kind of shifting and in transition, that it's going to do a number on our physical bodies, on our emotional bodies, our mental bodies, and our energy bodies as well. And that's where the Ascension symptoms come into play. But before I jump into the Ascension symptoms, I just want to take a minute to thank you. I want to thank you for being here. I want to thank you for liking, for sharing, for commenting, for dropping emojis in the comment section below. I want to thank those of you that have jumped over to Patreon. I want to thank those of you that are just showing the love and support that, not only to myself, but to each other. We're all going through a hard time. Everybody's sitting in a certain aspect of darkness right now. Everybody's being challenged. This is what happens when we go through, potent energy shifts and karmic chapter shifts, such as we are. And so it's very important that we hold a grace and a kindness in our heart space, not only for ourselves, but for other people as well. And this is a beautiful community. You all are super, super supportive and loving, especially to each other. I see each and every single day, especially over on Patreon, people jumping in and just kind of validating each other's experience. And that just reminds us that, again, we are not alone. And so I just want to thank you for the continuation of the love and support that, again, we show this community each and every single week and each and every single day, especially when times get hard. So I'm actually not going to spend very much time on my homework list because, quite honestly, I am switching things up in a big way in this next coming week. Most of the time I spend my time for this homework list trying to, promote the resources that I've created in order to do the healing work and all of those lovely things. Spoiler alert, especially to my Patreons, y'all are going to have some information come at you over the next couple of days, kind of laying out the changes that I am making to some of the resources that I've been creating in order to kind of help this next stage of evolvement. And I'm kind of excited about it because it's always a good time to change things up. We are coming out of a mutable season. That mutable season should have illuminated to each and every single one of us information and details in certain situations and circumstances in our lives that promote a change. That is really kind of doubling down. We need to make a change, a transformation. And in my own personal life or professional life, I would say, I have really been kind of taking a good look at what is working and what is not. And I am definitely excited to kind of share some of the changes that I'm going to be making, moving on and moving forward, hopefully to help more people lean in and do the work. And I know, not everybody has the time to sit down and do guides and do moon guides and do energy guides and to do journal work and all of those lovely things that, of course, I've been building and creating over the last couple of years to try and just assist in this very, very deep shadow work that we're all doing. And so I'm definitely going to be switching things up in a brand new way. And so to my Patreon members, definitely stay tuned for that. The last thing that I'm going to just take a quick moment to kind of promote is my new book, The Ascension Manual. Thank you so much, those that have purchased and received their copies at this particular juncture. Love the love and support going on there. But the reason why I want to, again, just take a moment to promote that is because it gives you an in-depth understanding of what ascension symptoms are, why they happen, what we can do about them, how to work through them, how to strengthen your nervous system in order to handle them a little bit better. And so if you're tuning in each and every single week and the ascension symptoms are definitely, putting a little bit of pressure on your daily activities, I would recommend that you get yourself a copy, that you lean in, that you start doing the work. And so you can, live I'm going to call it more pain-free life, because ascension symptoms are essentially a pain in the ass, in the head, and in the gut, and everywhere else where the energy gets triggered and activated. With that being said, the ascension symptoms that we had over the course of this past week, especially with that timeline shift, with a lot of the solar flares popping off. Of course, we had a couple of blackout situations on the Schumann resonance. All of that had a major, major impact on how many of us were feeling throughout the course of the week. And I know myself, I had a pretty tough week, I would say. I'm not going to share the details of that, but physically speaking, I can illuminate you to the fact that I had a migraine for like 5 days, can't see straight, blurriness, nausea. There's all kinds of things popping off. But specifically, when the energy gets as high as it did over this past week, and even more so when there is a dramatic shift in the collective's energy, us light workers are going to basically process that energy in a way that pretty much destabilizes the whole physical form. And I am really looking forward to the sun shifting into Cancer energy, because it's definitely going to alleviate a lot of that head pressure. And for me, that has been my major complaint. I think all of us had that major complaint through Gemini season. We knew it was going to hit us in the head. Again, our crown chakra wide open, our third eye definitely growing and expanding. And so again, a lot of challenging thoughts and perspectives and ideas that definitely did a number on our headspace. And so one of the interesting things that I would like to talk about, just kind of edging our way into the ascension symptoms of this week, is, as I previously mentioned, this very first week of Cancer season is going to be a little bit tough. We have a lot of not so nice aspects popping off, like I previously mentioned, specifically with Saturn and Neptune being aspected by the sun. And all of these triggers and activations are meant to kind of break us down in preparation for this huge emotional and intuitive and spiritual cleansing coming at us with this new moon in Cancer. One of the things that I found was super interesting when I was mapping out the week's astrology is that on June 23rd, so we're talking about Monday here, the moon in Gemini, okay, so yes, we're going to be in Cancer season now, but the moon shifts into Gemini energy late day, June 22nd, so Sunday evening. And early morning on Monday at 4:27 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, the moon goes void of course. And we sit in that void of course until 11:45 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Tuesday, June 24th. Now that, my friends, is a huge window where things are going to be shaky and unstable and uncertain and absolutely cray-cray and absolutely pressurized. We're going to be sitting in the void for a very long time. The void of reflection over Gemini season, what we were presented with, what we were challenged with, where we rewired our brain, where there were choices that were made that now we have to sit with, we have to feel our way through. That's what Cancer season is all about. But the interesting dynamic is that when the moon actually shifts into Cancer energy and we get out of that void, again, reminder, Cancer season is ruled over by the moon. And we're going to have a new moon pop off in Cancer energy while we sit in a void of the headspace of the whole month that we just experienced through Gemini season. We have to sit in that for a very, very long freaking time. I laugh with nervousness because in case you didn't notice, the world stage is an absolute shit show. And in case you haven't noticed, there are, highlights of anger and frustration and duality and polarization a multitude of times each and every single day as of late. And the fact that this is happening prior to us entering into the new moon window, and then we're popping off with a new moon in Cancer at a 4-degree on the 25th. 4 degrees is a relatively new chapter that we're entering into. And the chapter that we just chosen, our higher selves just chosen, as we're currently walking through this solstice gateway, is going to be triggered and activated in a big way for release, if nothing else. That's why I say this week is going to be tough for the emotional grief and sadness and release and purging that needs to be done before we pick ourselves up, dry ourselves off, and start kind of rebuilding the emotional realm from a place of strength and safety and security that currently we don't have because our whole damn world essentially feels like it's falling apart. And the interesting part about the new moon that is going to be taking place on the 25th, yes, it's in conjunction with Jupiter, which again, over exaggerates, grows and expands whatever it is that he touches. And in Cancer energy, the moon is very much in her rulership over these particular energies. And we're going to be an emotional shit show. Let's just get real about it. But that day is also a moon day, meaning all the aspects that take place on the day that we have the new moon in her rulership popping off in this Cancer energy is going to be a day of emotional refinement and realignment, recalibration, if you will. And it's going to be very intense. It is also the day that Mercury, ruler of the mental plane, that just lost his rulership over the season now that we're not in Gemini season, he's going to be at 29 degrees, which is a critical crisis, karmic degree, and anaretic degree in this Cancer energy, as again, he prepares to shift into the heart and soul of the zodiac, Leo energy, not only 24 hours after that new moon pops off. So when I say to you that this week's hump day, Wednesday, is going to be an absolute shit show, I am not exaggerating, okay? And we need to prepare for it. And when you can stay ahead of the energy and you anticipate it, and then you find yourself in it, you have a little bit more control over it than if it took you by surprise. And that's why we do these Ascension forecasts. So I just wanted to illuminate to you that we start the week off, essentially Cancer season off, with the moon in Taurus, which of course is going to provide us with that grounded earth energy that we're all going to need so that we don't get swept away in the emotional undercurrents of what Cancer season is absolutely pushing on us right from the gate, right from the get-go. And the moon is absolutely going to end the week off in the heart and soul of the zodiac in Leo energy. And so with all of that being said, we have to understand that the chaos, the craziness, the intensity, the pressure that has been going on in our headspace throughout the course of Gemini season, yes, it's going to be super, super nice to have that kind of alleviated, to have that go away a little bit. But what's going to be left is this like brain fried brain fog. Okay. So it's almost like our brains have been overworked. And of course, I think we can all get together and agree that that is a fact, right? We've been overwhelmed with information. We've been challenged in our ideas, in our headspace. We've been flipping the script. We've been rewriting the dialogues, the inner narratives. The neural pathways are just popping off. There's a lot of electricity going on in the headspace. Now, even though the pressure is coming out of the headspace and moving into our chest, we're still going to have some ascension symptoms that affect the headspace, meaning it may actually feel creepy AF to not have thoughts, running through your head at the rate, at the pressure that we just essentially got overwhelmed with and semi got used to through Gemini season. And so you might not be able to hold a thought. You might be so disconnected, so disassociated from your headspace that it may feel like you're living in a dream, like it's a haze, like it's very euphoric, if you will. And, even though we are kind of getting the volume button turned down in the headspace, there's this floatiness. It's almost like your head is not attached to your body. It's almost as if we're having that bobblehead syndrome. You know how your head feels really big, but it kind of bobbles. You don't really have control over it, and it's kind of ducking and weaving. Bobblehead syndrome with nothing going on up there is going to be a very interesting contrast to the overstimulation that we've been sitting in for this last month. I want to just kind of stay in the headspace for a second. There's going to be a lot of clicking in the ears. And if you're not careful, and what I mean by this is careful, we have a tendency to hold a lot of tension in our jaw. And if you're grinding your teeth or holding, clenching your jaw or whatever, you could have that clicking sensation in your ear actually kind of manifest in the clicking of your jaw. Maybe your jaw feels out of alignment. Maybe, when you're chewing, something just feels off. Your teeth aren't, matching up the way that it used to. Take note that if that happens to you, you are going to have to lean more into momentarily exercising that jaw space. And a lot of that tension is coming from this, I'm going to call it weird release of the head pressure, but we're still holding a lot of pressure in our necks and on our shoulders. Because we're essentially on the bridge and making this transition into a new world, a new chapter, a new timeline, the weight of the world, the roles and responsibilities that we still feel hella committed and obligated to, that pressure is still weighing on us greatly. And so I know that throughout Gemini season, specifically it was Taurus season, that we had a lot of aches and pains in our neck because Taurus energy rules over the throat and the neck as well. Because the moon is in Taurus, as we're moving through the very initial stages of Cancer season, there's going to be a rigidity that we're holding in our neck space and on our shoulders. And so it could feel like you can't fully move your neck from one side to the other. It could feel like the weight of the world is on your shoulders. And of course, we're holding that tension in our jaw. But the ear clicking is more, I'm going to call it the recalibration of the neural pathways being calmed down and soothed, meaning there's not as many zaps going on in our headspace as normal, but there's a recalibration of the information that we've already received that now needs to kind of like unfold in its data packet and therefore like rewrite the code of the operating system of our brain. And even though it's going to feel like we're kind of spaced out and in a daze and in a fog, the clicking in our ears is highly indicative that there's a lot more going on than we're actually aware of in our headspace. That clicking can also feel like, when you get water in your ear, and there's like this muffled clicking that kind of zooms in and zooms out. We are in a water season now, and maybe we dove so hard into this water season that we did kind of get water in our ear, and that headspace now being kind of alleviated from a lot of the pressure, a lot of the electricity, a lot of the firing is now creating this waterlogged muffle situation. So it could be a muffled clicking auditory experience or just a sensation in your head that you just can't seem to get rid of. Now, working our way kind of still in the headspace, the eyes are going to be blurry, mostly because many of us are going to be crying. Okay? Cancer season is a highly emotional time, and most water seasons throw us into the deep end of our emotions, but even more so in Cancer season because Gemini season was so stimulating for our mind, right? It was very cerebral. It was very intellectualized. It was very much in the headspace. And we didn't really factor in our emotions or intuition to some of the ideas or some of the possibilities or, some of the things that we were thinking about. And we get thrusted into the deep end of our emotions so dramatically when we enter into Cancer season that it's a weird transition to all of a sudden have these very powerful tsunami waves of emotion just crash upon us. And for the most part, because we are now in a new karmic chapter, whether you consciously or unconsciously chose that for yourself, the emotional residue that is still kind of stuck to us due to the changes and transformations that we've made, we got to get the junk and the gunk off of us. That's why the new moon in Cancer energy is going to be as emotional and as I'm going to call it cleansing and purifying as I predicted to be, because this is happening really close to the solstice. Typically speaking, we don't have new moons this close to the beginning of a season and a cycle. I think it's happening because everything's divinely scripted, and I think it's happening at a great time. We may as well rip the Band-Aid off, get it over with. Let's cry about it for a little minute so that we can get on with it. We can boss up. We can do what needs to be done in about a week's time. But that emotion, the sadness, whether it's actually physically leaving your eyes or not, it feels like, the warmth of tears accumulating in your eyes. There's a warmness there. There's also a soreness there because, in case you haven't noticed, when you're in the water, when you're rubbing your eyes for a long time, when you're crying for a long time, that shit burns. And it makes no sense because you think water'd be like really cooling and soothing, but I don't know, something about them tears that just burn the eyeballs right out of you. And so again, the eyeballs are going to definitely be overwhelmed with Ascension symptoms, mostly because we haven't been able to see the path moving forward clearly. We're still kind of looking back at what it is that we're moving away from, and there's a lot of nostalgia there. Again, Cancer energy is very connected to the past, very connected to wanting to keep things the same, even though that we know that we can't do that, because Cancer season in its entirety is bringing up a lot of inner child wounds and a lot of familial and relationship type of conflicts. There is a lot coming out of the woodwork that we can't even put our finger on. We're just overwhelmed with emotion. And of course, that's going to have a major factor on our eyes. Now, I want to talk about the skin for a second because we are moving into a water season, and typically speaking, we tend to kind of get puffy. We tend to get a little bit more water weight stuck in our physical form, and don't worry about it. It is going to dissipate once we move into Leo season, but just take notice of your face as we come into this Cancer season, and probably weekly as we move through Cancer season, because the face is going to be changing. It's going to look very distorted from one week to the next, depending on the emotions that we're either holding on to or that we are actively releasing. Either way, there's a lot of puffiness. There is a lot of, I'm going to say, dark spots that emerge. There is an overlay because we just kind of are walking this transitional bridge right now. There's an overlay between the old and the new. And sometimes you can look in the mirror and it looks like you are, 20 years younger. And sometimes you can look in the mirror and you see your grandmother, because Cancer season is very connected to the divine energy, the divine feminine energy of the familial structure. We're talking about grandmother and mother and you and child and all the different versions that you are able to observe in your familial lineage, and all the versions of self that you're now seeing rapidly progress within yourself as well. So we want to just pay attention to those visual changes to our face. Now, working our way down, I know I briefly talked about like the throat and the neck tension and the throat, the shoulder tension as well. It's all connected. And right now we're having a hard time with our words. Again, Gemini season was about communication. We were even having a little bit of a Mercury retrograde-ish vibe with some of the aspects that popped off throughout Gemini season, which limited our ability to articulate correctly. It limited us in being able to express ourselves fully. And it's hard when you have a lot of things going on in your inner realm that you would like to get off of your chest and out of your body, but you don't have the best way to put it into words or the best way to explain it or the best way to express it. And when I say to you that the urgency to want to share what's going on in your inner realm with the people, with the world around you is going to intensify, please realize that this is not a time to share. This is a time to process in your own world, in your own self. You need to fully give yourself the space to grieve and to be messy and to be emotional and to process, and then to build yourself back up before you go ahead and start sharing a lot of these emotional and mental revelations with the people, with the world around you. So of course, all of these emotional waves crashing upon us and kind of pushing through us, if you will, it is supposed to be cleansing and purifying, but it's also just exhausting. It's exhausting to be exhausted, and we're mentally exhausted, and now we're moving into being emotionally exhausted. But at the same time, I want you just to understand that this is a tough week. Okay, it's not going to be like this for the whole season. We have a lot of very tough aspects popping off. Squares are not fun, especially with the Lord of Karma. Never fun. And, we're in an adjustment period because we are in a new timeline. We are in a new chapter. And we essentially need the emotional beatdown in order to have that emotional breakthrough. And that is very much coming, but it's probably going to take halfway through the second week of Cancer season for us to feel that way. So the heart activations are going to be intense. There's going to be an element where maybe there is a tightness in your chest. Maybe you're having, heart palpitations or acid reflux. Maybe there is, just an ache and pain that you can't put your finger on, but it's all in that heart space. And of course, heart activations are coming with the moon. They're also coming with the Leo energy that Mercury will be moving into here very shortly. There's a lot going on because we're recalibrating now the vibration and frequency that this new version of self needs to anchor in, put into practice each and every single day, because we can't backtrack. The flip-flopping, the ability to backpedal and backtrack, that got closed off basically now as I'm coming to you here on the 20th. When we move through this solstice gateway, which we are actively doing now, which is officially happening, towards midnight-ish here this evening, that is when the choice points get removed. There's no more choosing after that. It's hardwired. It's a hard choice. It's that soul contract is locked in. The activations are locking in. And now you're going to see the materialization in your external realm of the choices that you consciously or unconsciously just made as we're moving into this new chapter. And the heart activations mean that there is more authentic vibrations and frequencies coming in from your soul self that now need to be animated and expressed through the physical ego avatar, which means that, we've had plenty of time to rewire the brain, but we're just dipping into being able to rewire the heart space. And so heart activations are not fun. They never feel good, but they are a necessary thing for us to experience in order to, again, release the junk and the gunk of the old and strengthen the vibrations, the frequencies, the new resonance of this new. So, of course, when we have a lot of emotions going on and we have a lot of heart activations going on, that does an absolute number on our gut. Now, digestion is always something that we talk about in these Ascension forecasts because, again, Ascension symptoms stem out of the central nervous system, and the central nervous system is being overwhelmed and bombarded by the subtle energies of all of the different planets basically having an influence on us. This is why we talk about the astrology aspects each and every single day in the energy forecasts, because that fine tunes what we're experiencing and what we're receiving from the subtle energies in the cosmos. That is our central nervous system's way of figuring out what it is that we're receiving in energetic form as far as information data packets go. So we talk about digestion frequently because there are so many nerves in the gut. The gut is the second brain. And, specifically now with Mars and Virgo energy, because Virgo energy has a major impact on the gut, as does Cancer energy as well. We're going through it in our guts. Okay. So digestion is popping off. I already mentioned that there's a high probability of kind of, packing on some water weight. You're going to feel bloated. You're going to feel puffy. You're going to feel thirsty as F. Even though we're in a water season, we need to stay hydrated. But all of that water that we're putting in us, it kind of sloshing around in our stomachs, like you can feel it, because our stomachs aren't really processing food that well. And there's this element, because we are in a water season now, where you could feel seasick. There could be this discombobulation in your perspective, and therefore this nausea in your gut that mimics being on a boat, mimics being seasick. And, it doesn't feel good to have that flip-flop energy in your gut. It doesn't feel good to basically be able to lose all the food that you've put into yourself in a moment's notice. It almost, again, kind of mimics the fact that, yes, there's this flip-floppy back and forth seasickness type of sensation, but the elevator drop that I think I talked about last week, that feeling when you're in an elevator and the elevator drops and your stomach goes with it, but the other elevator comes to a standstill and your stomach is still on the move? It's that kind of energy. And, as we go through this week, specifically highlighting the midweek when we have that new moon in Cancer pop off, this is when most of the Ascension symptoms are going to be very intense and in some cases unbearable. And again, there are a lot of things that we can do. You don't just want to curl up in a ball and just sit it out and let the energy pass. You have to move it. That's the whole point of these Ascension symptoms, is to give you a hint and a clue of what's blocked in your physical body. And if you're wondering, what you can do about it, again, I'm going to welcome you to get your copy of the Ascension Manual. And we go into depth and detail about, the planetary influence, the planetary placements, what you can do in order to ease some of those symptoms. And, we all have a particular resource that works better for us than maybe works for somebody else. But you have to kind of go down through the list and try it in order to see how your physical body responds to it. And specifically this week, I would put a major red flag on midweek when we're kind of being sucked into this new moon darkness, right? New moon, dark phase of the moon. There's no light in the sky. It's pretty scary to jump into new foreign territory and travel into an area that you've never been before with no flashlight, with no guidance whatsoever. And that's exactly what we're doing here this week. And so, the fears, the doubts, the insecurities, they're going to come creeping up because we don't feel safe and secure. The whole point of Cancer season is for us to stabilize, is for us to build a strong enough emotional foundation within ourselves to feel safe and secure, so that it doesn't matter what's going on in the world outside of us. As long as we know who we are and that we can handle whatever is thrown at us, we're going to be okay. And that's what we're currently trying to build. But this week, we can't build in a space that still contains the junk, the foundation, the structure that obviously wasn't strong enough to house us. And that's what we're grieving. That's what we're sad about. That's what we're letting go. That's what we're purging here this week. And so it is going to be very overwhelming. Speaking about fears, doubts, and insecurities, though, I know I kind of briefly just said that Cancer energy was, triggering the inner child. There's a lot of healing that takes place in Cancer season because we're unpacking that childhood pain and trauma. And we're understanding that part of us is still that child, but we also have to counterbalance that childlike part of us with the maturity of showing up and being the person that we were praying for would come and save us when we were kids. And so it is kind of like a split part of self that we're going to experience throughout Cancer season, because part of us is that inner child, and then we need to reparent that particular part of the inner child as the adult, the healing adult or healed adult, although many people are out there claiming that they're healed. I don't think so. I think that as long as we're alive, we still have more healing to do. But I digress. We are the grown-ass adults. Okay, we have the wisdom, we have the knowledge, we have the resources, we have the ability to heal that part of self. And it's very much a back and forth type of thing, because Cancer energy is about nurturing ourselves back to a place of health and wellness, starting with our emotional realm. And so we're going to have a lot of triggers, a lot of activations in order to illuminate where fears, doubts, and insecurities, where self-worth issues, where inner child pain and traumas are still alive and well within us. When I say to you that there's a high potentiality for you, for everyone, for the collective to throw a childlike tantrum out of anger, out of frustration, out of not getting, quote unquote, your own way, this is what I'm talking about. We have a lot of Cancer energy. We have a lot of Aries energy, in case you hadn't noticed, right? The Aries energy is the infant of the zodiac. We can go from 0 to 60 and back to 0 in less than 30 seconds. We can throw a whole tantrum. We can wreck the whole world around us and then be tickety-boo while everyone else is still observing this tantrum that we just had and wondering what just happened. And I would say, not that I'm a betting girl, but, you know, take a good look at what's going on the greater, grander global stage. If that ain't a pure example of an immature tantrum, I don't know what is. But, you know, as these pain and traumas, especially from our inner child realm, get triggered and activated, of course, there's an emotional volatility there that just, you know, throws us into reaction mode. And reaction mode is ego mode, is that unconscious programming mode. And it would be very, very advisable, especially going into this week, to act as the observer as much as possible so that you can catch yourself in these moments where your inner child wants to come out to play in the worst kind of ways and throw a tantrum, that you can then switch gears and act as the matured, healing adult and provide the safety, security, the comfort that you would offer a child mid-tantrum to calm and soothe them the F down. This is up to us to show up in our own worlds, to our own damn selves, and start realizing that nobody's coming to save us, that that is an inside job, that we have to do that our own damn selves. We're going to get a lot of opportunity here this week with the triggers and activations that are going to be popping off in anticipation for this emotional, spiritual, and karmic cleansing coming at us with this new moon in Cancer. We're going to have plenty of opportunity to see where the wounds are still alive and well and give us the opportunity to fix them, heal them, repair them in a major way. That when I say fix, heal, and repair, I probably didn't finish my thought earlier when I was talking about digestion. We have Mars and Virgo energy, so the level of irritability that we're all at, we can't stand our own damn selves, let alone anybody else. And that Virgo energy, because Mars is fresh in it, we haven't taken any action or made any moves yet, because we have to think very carefully about what we plan on doing before we can take action and make moves. And that's where a lot of the frustration and the irritability is stemming from, because Mars wants that continuous action. He wants to act on impulse. He wants to see progress and productivity. Virgo energy wants to see all of that too, but only by operating on a well thought out, well calculated, very, very well thought out plan. The smallest of details, the potentiality of all outcomes before we're going to make any moves. And so there is this frustration. Mars, of course, rules over the Aries energy that Neptune and Saturn are in, and that Aries energy is the fire starter energy. And we have the Virgo energy that Mars is currently sitting in, trying to kind of cool that fire down so that we don't have a tantrum. But then you trigger and activate all of these inner child wounds. Good luck. That's all I'm going to say is good luck to each and every single one of us acting as our higher selves here this week, because we have so many triggers and activations stacked against us that this is going to be the true testament to how much power and control we have over our energy, our emotions, our mentality, our actions. We are definitely going to be tested to walk the walk and talk the talk here this week. So here's the beautiful thing about this week, is that this is a very inspiring time. There's a lot of beauty that is being revealed to us, but there is so much more, I'm going to call it triggers and activations, fears, doubts, and insecurities being activated, that those moments of pure brilliance, of pure beauty, of downloads of inspiration and creativity, They are so sparse in comparison to the triggers and activations of the shadow that we're actually not going to appreciate them for what they are. Now, when I say to write shit down immediately, okay, you are not going to remember it. Not for 5 minutes, not for 10 minutes. The download comes, it makes sense, you see it, you feel it, it then leaves. You need to write this shit down. It is like this beautiful glimmer amongst a very damaging storm, okay? And I know we've all witnessed a certain level of damage and destruction from Mother Nature when she decides to have a tantrum and throws a storm. But there's also a beauty that you can focus on through that storm as well. It's very cleansing. I don't know if you know what I mean, but the day after a storm, I know specifically there was a devastating hurricane that I experienced years back and couldn't believe it the next day after a whole night of, bunkering down and literally feeling like the roof was going to be ripped off. You come out and all you see is damage and destruction. Trees are down, structures are damaged. You have the neighbors' items in your yard and vice versa. Like, it's just an absolute mess. But the sun is out and the birds are chirping and there is just this eerie sense of beauty among the damage and destruction that you just witnessed. And that is very much the same kind of vibe, the same kind of experience that I think many of us are going to have this week. There are such few small but very profound moments of beauty sprinkled amongst this absolute shit show of stormy destruction. Most of it emotional. So, that's what I will say too, although there are going to be some events that pop off in the world that are definitely water related, that are definitely going to change the physical landscape of the area in which they're going to be popping off in. But anywho, I digress. I'm trying to kind of paint a picture that when you receive these beautiful downloads, when you have these beautiful ideas, when you can focus on these smaller little beautiful parts of this bigger, not so beautiful puzzle, write them down, capture them, take a mental snapshot, if you will, of what that is all about and how that makes you feel, because these are some of the things that we are going to be inspired by, motivated by, some of these things that we are going to be building and creating over this next karmic chapter, taking us into the fall, that we're getting downloaded with amongst the storm here this week. So definitely take notice to that. One of the things about receiving profound insight, like I just described, is that what comes immediately after that is immense fear. Just when we gain a vision on what could be, on what feels right, on what we're being soulfully triggered and activated to pursue, immediately the ego programming kicks in with all of this bullshit, fears, doubts, insecurities. What if this happens? What if you fail? What if you're not good enough? Again, self-confidence, self-esteem, inner childhood pain and trauma issues coming to the surface. And so I think that for whatever reason, the beautiful things being sprinkled amongst the, not so beautiful things, it's happening so that when the wave of emotion, when the wave of karma washes over us, specifically with this new moon in Cancer, when it washes over us and it removes the junk and the gunk and that emotional pain and sadness and residue of the world that we just walked away from, what's left are these beautiful, tiny little pieces of beauty, of inspiration, of hope. And when the storm clears and when the skies clear and when the birds start chirping again, and they will, suddenly Mercury will be shifting into Leo energy. We're going to see those little downloads a lot more clearly. And we are going to be kind of focusing on what needs to be done in order for us to pursue that vision, that inspiration, that download. And we are going to actively be working towards it because, again, first week of Cancer season, absolute shit show. The last 3 weeks of Cancer season, an option and opportunity to build. And we are going to be building on some of the beautiful sprinkles that we're going to be receiving throughout this particular storm. Now, the last thing that I want to talk about, which we usually talk about in the Ascension symptom rundown each week, is the dream state, the sleep state. But this time, I have a little twist on it, okay? So first of all, there's going to be a switch up in your sleep, like your physical sleep. Cancer energy, I would say, typically speaking, our dreamscape is going to be a lot more emotional, but the physical sleep can be very deep if you can find yourself falling asleep. Water energy is very heavy. It's very soothing, but also because of the emotional disruptions taking place this week, I would say that our dreamscape is going to be highly emotional. It's going to highlight grief and sadness. But here's what I really want to talk about. You should have, over the course of this last week and as we move through this solstice energy and into this week, you should have already noticed or will be noticing a major shift in your dreamscape, which is indicative of whether or not, I think we all jumped a timeline, but some of them are more dramatic than others over the course of this week. You can tell by your dreamscape where you're at as far as the choices that you made to jump timelines. The reason why I say this, for the last 4 days, every single person that I've encountered in my dreamscape, I have no recollection of ever meeting. They're all strangers to me, which means that I'm in a different astral state, which means that my vibration, my frequency, my soul state is in a different timeline than what I was this time last week. And so pay attention to your dreamscape, because your dreamscape is going to be indicative of what just changed, what just shifted for you, what timeline you're in, what karmic chapter you're in. It's going to take some time to kind of make sense. But when I say to you, like, I'm a dream walker, I've been doing this for years. I have full consciousness when I'm unconscious in my dreamscape. I get it. When I say to you that the last 3 nights, for sure, all of the people that I was with in that dreamscape, I never recognized ever before, right? Brand new dreamscape, brand new people, brand new topics and themes. And it's interesting because I don't really have a whole lot, typically speaking, I don't usually have a whole lot of dreams that are like involving a lot of people. And the last 3 nights, it's very much been about, and I can't really put my finger on it as of yet, but it's almost as if we're coming together in this big stadium, if you will. And then we are separating, almost like, in school at the end of the day, all the buses lined up, and then everybody would like run out of the school and everybody would go to their according bus and go home. Well, it's almost as if we're all strangers, but we're all in this stadium and we're all leaving the stadium to go outdoors. And when we do, there's all of these very different modes of transportation lined up, and there are maps and there are indicators on where you need to go to get on the bus that you need to get on in order to get to where it is that you need to go. And if you've been with me for any amount of time, or you are a client of mine, you would know that we do a lot of dream work. We do a lot of dream interpretation, specifically talking about the modes of transportation that get illuminated in our dreamscape. And when we find buses, that is a communal mode of transportation. And when we find buses, typically speaking, you're not the bus driver. So that means that something else is in control. And the people that you're on the bus with, collectively speaking, are part of the same mission. And so I think it's just super interesting. And I just thought I would share my own experiences, because when the timeline jumped midweek last week, I was thrown into a completely different astral environment than I've ever experienced before. And there's not one individual there, and I'm talking thousands of people in my dream. There's not one individual that is familiar to me. And that's how I know that the collective jumped a major timeline, because this is like, there's no remnants of anything familiar that I'm used to in the astral realm and in my dreamscape that indicates to me that something is similar, that something is the same. We are in brand new territory, people. We are in brand new timelines, brand new karmic chapters, and we just need a little bit of time for us to acclimate to this new vibration and frequency. You're going to start seeing role changes take place in a big way. What do I mean by that? The physical people that you have in your life, there's going to be a lot of roles that get retired, meaning people are going to leave your life that have been around for a very long time. And in the place of those people, not saying they're the exact same role nor the exact same people, but there's an introduction taking place in Cancer season. Now that we've jumped timelines and we've agreed to different soul contracts, there's going to be new people entering into your environment, entering into your realm that are mirroring back to you the vibration and frequency that you're currently resonating at, which should be an indicator to you of the work in which you've done. And so we can learn a lot from our dreamscape specifically. I mean, we can all the time, but specifically this week, we can learn a lot about where our energy body is at, where our vibration and frequency is at, where our karmic chapter is at, what we're jumping into, what we're beginning, what we're initiating in this very first week of Cancer season. And again, that new moon in Cancer is very much in the removal of emotional, mental, spiritual residue. But what's coming, like the wave that comes in after that, is pushing us towards these new situations, these new circumstances, these new chapters, these new people, these new passions, these new desires. So again, we just have to treat this week like we're ripping off the Band-Aid in a very aggressive way to get it done, to get it over with, so we can let the air get at it, heal it up, let it scab over, so that, again, we can build a new foundation and structure of, well, in this case, skin, if we're talking about scabs, but realistically speaking, in our physical realms, we're talking about this new strength that we have within us, this new will, this new discipline, this new passion, this new fire that we, at this moment, don't feel because we're still on the bridge walking through it, that we will be feeling very, very intensely, very, very dramatically throughout the course of this week and throughout Cancer season. So guys, I think that's all that I'm going to be talking about for this week's Ascension symptoms. Hopefully something resonated with you. Hopefully you stay ahead of the game. Hopefully you anticipate the energy coming at us this week, specifically midweek, with all of that new moon Cancer energy. Reminder, this too shall pass. So we have a huge opportunity to boss up, to do some healing, to put the past behind us. Let's lean all the way into the discomfort. Let's rip off this Band-Aid. Let's get this scab healing. Let's get this show on the road. I thank you so much for tuning in. I send you nothing but love, and we'll talk to you soon.